Right, around 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's such an important discussion we need to have ahead of Parliament, which is going to sit to consider land expropriation tomorrow. In case you're wondering, what happened to all of that? We were talking about this just over a month ago. It was put on hold to allow political parties to focus on the local government elections. The EFF and ANC agree on the expropriation, but the EFF wants the state to be the custodian of all the land, while the governing party wants limited custodianship. Well, let's unpack this with Associate Professor, soon-to-be Professor Elmien du Plessis from the Northwest University Law Faculty. Associate Prof, for the moment, all the best to you in January 2022. This is such a complicated piece of law, though, if it were to be passed. What does this hinge on, in your opinion?
Yes, so I think we must just, at the outset, distinguish between the 18th Amendment of the Constitution, which is what will happen tomorrow in Parliament. They're going to vote on it. They received the report from the ad hoc committee. They drafted a bill amendment that will amend Section 25 of the Constitution. So that's one process, and I think we must just distinguish that because people sometimes get confused from the expropriation bill, which is legislation, which is still in the making, that will continue sometime next week, and probably will be finished within the first quarter. But to focus on what will happen tomorrow, so since 2018, that February, we remember the EFF put a motion in front of Parliament to say that the Constitution must be amended to make a provision for expropriation without compensation. The EFF also put in that motion that the state must be custodian of all the land, and the ANC quite drastically amended that motion. They, for instance, put 3 requirements in for expropriation: not to harm the economy, not to harm agriculture, etc. And they took out the custodianship because it is not ANC policy. Custodianship of all land is not ANC policy, so they couldn't keep it in there. And then you will remember we had that Constitutional Review Committee that went around the country, asked people, should the Constitution be amended, yes or no? They came back to Parliament. They said, well, the people said it must be amended, and they handed it over to an ad hoc committee to amend the Constitution to make explicit what is implicit. And I think there's not really agreement on what is implicit, but nonetheless, that was the purpose of this ad hoc committee, and it is that process now that's coming to a finalization.
And many people, Elmien, are also putting forward their views on this argument, saying it's all good and well to have the ANC and the EFF generally on the same page. This custodianship seems to be the problem, but the ANC finds itself in a unique position because they also are the ruling party in the country. Where does that regulation, where does that weighting come in regarding what Parliament decides on this legislation?
Yes, so I would say there are 2 things that the ANC and the EFF differs quite dramatically on, and I don't know if they will find each other before tomorrow. I doubt it. But the one is the custodianship issue. So the ANC put in some form of amendment. They said custodianship of certain land. We don't know what land, but it's clear that they have a policy of ownership, state ownership, communal land, and then this custodianship of certain land was put in there. And the EFF is quite clear. They say all land. So they're not finding one another. And I think that's quite a drastic difference. So that's the one thing. The other thing is the EFF said Section 25(2) must be removed entirely. They don't want that duty on the state to pay compensation at all when they expropriate, while the ANC said, well, in certain circumstances, the compensation may be nil. So it's not without compensation, it's nil compensation, and that's another area where they differ on quite dramatically. So the ANC or the Parliament, we need 2/3 majority to pass this act, or this bill to become an act to amend the Constitution, and the ANC doesn't have that. So the ANC either needs the help from the DA, who's been quite clear from the beginning that they are against any form of amendment, and the EFF, who I think it was around the beginning of September, when the final version of the bill came in front of the committee, they actually walked out of the committee. So I think that's quite a clear indication that